Uhuru, Jai Bhim, Operoma, Lentai, Salve. Welcome to the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent podcast series, where we amplify voices, uncover realities, and dive deep into the lived experiences and resilience of communities discriminated on work and dissent worldwide. Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent, also known as GFOD, is a platform voicing the rights and entitlements of those impacted by caste hierarchies and analogous systems across the continents, across the globe. Initiated in 2019, GFOD co-creates spaces that emphasizes the rights and dignity of marginalized communities affected by systemic discrimination based on work and dissent, such as Roma in Europe, Dalits and Burakumin in Asia, Haratin in Africa, Quilombola and Palenque in Latin America, and of course others who have suffered social prejudices while aspiring for a life of dignity and peace. We represent around 270 million people across the globe.
Hello and welcome to the second episode of Unheard Echoes, the Global Work and Decent Dialogue, a podcast series brought to you by Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent, also known as GFOD. I'm Naveen Gautam, your host, and for episode 2, please join me in welcoming Dr. Simona Tortocoi. Dr. Simona is a Roma activist and currently working with GFOD and Ergo Network. Over the past 15 years, she has dedicated herself to ensuring that not only the Romas heard at the global stage, but that her voice also becomes a part of the stronger, united voice that speaks for CDWD living across the globe. In July 2024, Dr. Simona addressed the high-level political forum on sustainable development, subdivision of both the United Nations General Assembly and the United Nations Economic and Social Council, responsible for the entire organization's policy on sustainable development. Hello and welcome, Simona. Thank you for your time.
Hello, Naveen. Thank you for having me.
To start off, Simona, can you take us back to when you first realized you were part of the Roma community, and how did that awareness shape your early years and experience, Simona?
Indeed, it was quite a challenging moment for me to realize that I'm part of a different type of community. It was in the early years of my childhood. And this was mainly because of the hate speech that I heard from the mainstream society towards the Roma people, but also the classical attitudes you could see among children in school. So on the one hand, the Roma community had its own traditions, Roma weddings, the traditional Roma ball in the village. But on the other hand, the majority of the population was seeing us different. Like, don't stay with them, don't hang around with them. We were always hearing this, that we as children are different.
Thank you, Simona, for bringing it up. And I'm sure, if you look at even Dalit in Asia, they also have been facing this hate speeches. And as we move forward, Simona, do you actually remember the first time you witnessed or experienced discrimination, which either happened against you or any Roma member? And how did it actually affect you personally? And I'm sure that might have shaped your perspective in the future, Simona.
Yeah, so I think it was the experience of discrimination that did not target me personally, but a relative of mine. We were walking through the city, and at one point we just stopped next to a public institution to rest. And then the security person there just asked us to move out of there. It was not explicitly targeted saying, bad words towards the Roma, but it was just a gesture or explicit saying, move away from here, don't stay here, because, the people would perceive that we are begging or waiting for something, and the security person just pushed us away. And it was an awkward moment because maybe I was more aware of the implication, but my sibling was like, why is he reacting like that? Why he has this attitude towards us? And it was very difficult for me to explain what's the reason behind their gesture.
Earning a doctorate is a huge achievement, Simona, especially given the challenges many in the Roma community face. What drove you to pursue higher education, and how did that journey led you towards activism, which you are doing now?
Well, this was a long journey, to say so. And it all started in my primary school. I was a good student and I was quite privileged to have different socioeconomic situation compared to the other Roma in the village where I grew up. And the fact that somehow we were living among the mainstream maybe also decided a bit my fate in terms of who I am and the profession I'll get later on. So we were a family of 5, and my parents always valued education. And I was the first in my family to pursue a higher education, a degree. But this was also triggered by my internal motivation to prove to others that I can do better, that I can be equal as them, meaning the non-Roma people. So it was a push from my side to prove that, I can also make it. So being a good student pushed me to pursue what I wanted to do. And I wanted to become a teacher. I wanted to get involved into changing people's minds. And with the help of the affirmative action program for Roma students, I could study social sciences in high school and then later on pursue a higher education degree in language and pedagogy. And during my university studies, I realized that there are few Roma students studying, even though it was a university city. So we tried to mobilize ourselves, and in 2009, we founded the first Roma youth organization in that city. We were usually having mentorship activities with children, cultural activities, celebrating the Roma Day. But with time, that organization became much more stronger and recognized. So that was the foundation of my activism, but also the fact that in that city, most of the Roma were discriminated against. And the city was quite known, not only in Romania, but in the region as a whole, because the mayor at that time built a wall between the Roma community and the non-Roma. So this brought a lot of attention, and we were there on the ground, seeing the impact this discriminatory practice had towards the Roma community, but also how this fostered negative attitudes from the non-Roma society. Some explicitly agreeing with what the mayor did, and just blaming Roma for the situation they were in. So, having experienced these injustices towards Roma, I started to focus more on Roma-related things. And after my bachelor, I decided to go in Budapest for a preparatory program for Roma students, supporting them to pursue master degrees in international universities. So having had the chance to go to Budapest, to meet with other youngsters, Roma youngsters, activists, leaders in their communities, it also built my identity as a Roma, it strengthened my identity about Roma. And here I also had the chance to learn about Roma history, language, culture, to know important Roma figures and heroes like Dr. Ambedkar you have for the Dalit community. So hearing about, Raymond Gurem, a Romani Holocaust survivor and a Romani resistance hero, or many other such figures, boosted my pride in being a Roma. So somehow my activism developed way before my academic kind of career, and I also realized at that time how important it is to build knowledge about Roma, because in my previous studies I never had a chance to learn something about Roma in school, in my university. I never had Roma teachers, and going to Budapest in this preparatory program made me realize how important it is for Roma to own their story, to contribute to knowledge production, and also to make their voice heard. So after my studies in education policy, I applied for a doctorate program at Central European University, and I was very lucky that I had so many Roma mentors around and peers. And Central European University was a very good institution to support Roma, but also other minorities to kind of do what they wanted actually. So throughout my academic career, I have wrote a lot of things about experiences of anti-gypsies, of Roma students in higher education, Roma youth political participation, employment of Roma youth as well, Roma representation in textbooks. So many such topics. And it was really a rewarding experience for me that I could see that I can shed light on things that the mainstream society was not aware of. So this would be in short the journey towards academia and towards activism.
Thank you, Simona. I'm not sure why you're calling it a short journey. It's a very long and a powerful journey, Simona. It's quite motivating. And of course, I agree, very strongly agree, as myself being part of Dalit community, socioeconomically backward. Education has been a driving force in the Roma as well as Dalit movement, and of course, other CDD-WD movement across the globe, which has extensively empowered communities with knowledge and, of course, breaking the cycles of discrimination through advocacy opportunities. And like whenever we talk about Roma community, we always know that these education process and other movements have also fostered cultural rights, which is a very important part of the Roma movement altogether. And thank you for bringing up some of the most pivotal movements that have sparked your passion for advocating for Roma rights and also have to some extent pushed you to say that, okay, I actually have to do something about this thing. Looking at the Roma community today, Simona, what do you see as the most pressing issues and how have these challenges evolved over time? And what do you think is the need for immediate action and attention? I'm sure one of the major issues is about access to justice and police brutality, but what are the other issues which you want to bring up?
Indeed, there are so many issues still pervading nowadays, and we see that in Europe, over the last 30 years or so, the European Union and the European community has had good intentions, to say so, when it comes to Roma, but the discourse that the European community had towards the Roma was a more integrationist discourse, like how do we make Roma integrate into the European society? And for the last, let's say, 5-10 years, we see that there's a more inclusion approach from the European Union. While these developments are to be applauded, we see that the member states, different European Union countries are having negative reactions towards the Roma still. We see that despite judgments of the European Court of Human Rights, there's still a high level of school segregation of Roma children. Roma children are placed into mentally disabled schools. They don't have access to quality education. If we move towards, let's say, Roma women's situation, we still see a strong segregation of Roma mothers in maternity wards, obstetric violence. So many issues still affecting. So the plethora of issues, it's still there. As I said, there are some developments, but I think the biggest challenge is the discrimination towards the Roma. And in Europe, we have something called anti-Gypsies, more anti-Roma races, which is a term used to denote the specific discrimination that the Roma are encountering. So many of the countries in the European Union and beyond not recognize, that anti-Gypsies is the core kind of cause of the situation Roma are in. And here I don't want to provide the, let's say, homogeneous picture of the Roma because we are quite diverse in many respects. But overall, I think the situation it's not a pink one, to say so, because whenever we look at some statistics, we see significant gaps between Roma and non-Roma, as well as let's say less development for the Roma communities compared to the mainstream communities. So the challenges are plenty. As you said, access to justice is still an issue. We see, I know, institutions like the Council of Europe and many as such who have been addressing this issue, trying to support access to justice for Roma women, for example. But usually these are short-term projects and would require a systematic approach to ensure, first of all, that Roma communities are empowered to address the discrimination they're experiencing, but also they have the necessary resources and financial, knowledge-wise resources to take forward their cases. And that's why we see many instances that the number of cases reported by Roma are less compared to the actual experiences. So that's still an issue. Police brutality, I think during the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen so many instances of police brutality against Roma, again, the Council of Europe, but also the OSCE ODIHR. It's trying to implement different trainings on of police workers and how they should address, let's say, the specificities of the Roma community. So there is still a lot, and maybe I just want to mention that another area is access to employment and decent jobs. Also that at GFOD we are advocating for decent work for our communities and trying to dismantle this discrimination that we are experiencing based on our work and descent. So many Roma nowadays, even if you are, let's say, educated, you are perceived as over-educated for some jobs. So many Roma youngsters who have, let's say, master's degrees are still working in civil society organizations or, jobs that would not fit or would not match with their professional preparation. But on the other hand, we see Roma women, youth being pushed to do the, let's say, the typical Roma jobs, let's say inverted commas, typical Roma jobs in terms of cleaning houses or buildings or public spaces, collecting waste, recycling. So we are still doing those type of jobs that the mainstream population would not do. So that's also given, or it's a result of the discrimination Roma are experiencing on the labor market, not being able to access formal employment, and the corresponding benefits that formal employment would bring them.
Yes, thank you, Simona, for bringing these issues. The Roma community faces several fundamental issues, be it discrimination, segregation or social exclusion, education barriers, unemployment, which you brought up, especially amongst the youth, is a major issue, and economic hardship. Housing and living condition would be another issue which we would like to talk more about, how they are facing issues regarding access to clean water, electricity and proper health care, and of course, finally, legal and political barriers. But I think despite these struggles, Simona, Roma culture is very rich and resilient. And what do you think? What are some of the strengths and unique aspects of the community that you think are important to preserve? And more than preserving, what are those unique aspects which we also need to celebrate, Simona?
I think the first aspect to mention here is the resilience of the Roma culture. We have endured centuries of persecution, discrimination. We were forced to move our homes, or forced into migration, but we have still kept our cultural identity. The fact that the Romani language, which is not, let's say, an official language, it's not a standardized language, is still preserved, and people speak it, and we can understand each other. Let's say a Roma from Romania can understand with a Roma from Finland or from Spain. Okay, there are differences in terms of dialect, but the fact that the language survived, it's a key point of resilience for me. And a second aspect would be the craftsmanship of the Roma communities. On the one hand, our traditional work has been faded away because of the new technological advancements, but also different types of actors on the market who are providing cheaper products. But throughout our history in Europe, and not only, the Roma were very good metal workers, wood carvers, and this work also transformed somehow into art and creativity, and this has been passed down to generations. We see in some communities, especially the metal workers, how they keep these workshops from generations to generations, and we still have the basic infrastructure in some villages or in some communities. So I think that's one aspect of it. On the other hand, as I mentioned before, because of the discrimination and the types of works that we were pushed to do, we also received this negative reaction from the mainstream. Yes, like, let's say there are some communities who are working with bones of animals, so these were perceived as dirty, Roma, not to be touched. So many of the traditional works have been also negatively perceived. But this is, as I said, because we were pushed to do these types of jobs. Another important component, I would say, it's indeed music and dance. We are quite a rich culture in terms of music. It's so diverse, and I just want to mention that flamenco of Spain, actually, it's a Roma traditional dance. It's not a Spanish thing, but it's a Roma thing, and the Spanish community has failed to acknowledge that this is a Roma traditional dance. So, as I said, music quite known, dance is quite known, sometimes in a very stereotypical way, because in the mind of some non-Roma communities, when they say Roma, they say exotic, dancing, wanderers. So they many times they reinforce these stereotypes about Roma. But for me personally, the Roma culture, it's strongly related to my family, to my community. The type of principles or values that we share within my family, between my extended family. I think this is very personal for each of us, but I think this is the strength of what does it mean to be a Roma, a strong sense of family, of community, of closeness, togetherness.
Yeah, totally agree. And this fact about flamenco music is a little surprising, Simona. I didn't know it actually belonged to the Roma community itself. But I think Roma music is itself one of the most vibrant and influential aspects, not only for the Roma culture, but also beyond. If you look at the whole European culture, which somehow blends diverse influences while also maintaining its own unique identity, Simona. And of course, it has shaped and enriched many musical traditions, not only across Europe, but also across the globe. Before we move to the next part, I'm sure, Simona, you would like to talk about few people or organization who have extensively supported you. Has there been any key allies or organizations or movement that have helped push the cause forward? I'm sure you would like to talk about European Roma Grassroots Network, Simona.
Yes, indeed. I want to mention about the Ergo Network. And Ergo Network, at that time, when we established the Roma Youth Organization in Baia Mare in Romania, Ergo Network had a different name at that time, but they were one of our supporters. So I think the history goes even back in those times. So while I was a student, I think the key person that influenced me and supported me become an activist was Loredana Mihali. She's a Roma woman from the north of Romania, quite prominent figure in the Roma movement. So her support was invaluable in the sense that she really brought Roma youngsters together. She kind of shaped, our knowledge about Roma culture, history, and also, she inspired us to take actions. So she was a key figure, and I'm very grateful to her for being around us even after, like 10, 15 years after we established the organization. And then there were so many people throughout my career. But yeah, definitely Ergo Network was around, sometimes in the background, sometimes more in the forefront. But the fact that they have involved me in different, trainings, research projects, or inviting me even to share my experience in some of their events, I think that made me quite comfortable to find my space as an activist. But in the same time, from an academic point of view, I had very good mentors, academics, that were always supporting or, sometimes even challenging my viewpoints or my approach towards research. So there are many names. I don't want to omit someone, so that's why I'm reluctant to give specific names. But I'm very grateful to them as well, and also to my Roma peers and colleagues, young Roma activists at the time, with whom I have shared, the challenges, the issues, the ambitions that I had. And the plans that I had at that time. So they really supported me to have a common understanding of, what we should be doing and how we should approach things. And of course, there's also my supervisor, who was a non-Roma person, but a really empowering person, to say so, always trying to support in different aspects with my academic work, and supporting me to get published, which is a huge thing, especially if you're coming from a marginalized community, to say so. Yeah, but I think there are a lot of names throughout, but definitely some had a bigger impact than others.
Yeah, I've also heard about these names, Simona, and indeed they are huge, not only in terms of the movement, but also in terms of the support they have provided to everyone who's working on these issues. So can you also share a few success stories, Simona, or any moments from your work that have given you hope for the future? And what are your bigger goals for the future when we talk about Roma advocacy? Are there any other projects or initiatives or any movements you are particularly excited about at the global or regional level?
So for the last 3 years, I have joined the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent. And I must admit that I was not really sure what is this about and how it fits into the whole Roma, let's say, movement in Europe. Because even within our movement, of course, we have so many differences. We are quite diverse, as I said, and different, let's say, sub-movements within the larger Roma movement have different approaches. But I think, and I really believe that what the Global Forum aims to do and the specific work we are doing is not covered by any Roma organization. Yeah, so UN-specific advocacy, human rights work, as I said, has faded when it comes to Roma in the last 15 years or so. We still have some very good Roma organizations that are focusing on human rights. But of course, as I mentioned before, the issues and the challenges are still quite diverse, so they don't have maybe the capacity also to be responsive to everything that's happening. But they are doing a tremendous job, and I really want to congratulate them. But I think with GFOD, we are covering a niche area, and it's very good that we are building this solidarity network with other communities, because alone we cannot achieve much. And I'm quite open to say this. And I think it's very, very important to be given the space as a Roma, as a Roma youth, as a Roma woman, to have the opportunity to speak in this fora that usually we don't really have access to. So Ergo, on the one hand, is doing a great advocacy work at the European level, but the international level, there's not much being done on Roma. So I think GFOD has boosted a lot the presence of Roma in these UN spaces. And now I'm just saying this because in March we have just concluded the Commission on the Status of Women, and we were trying to brainstorm with other Roma women what has happened when it comes to Roma women presence in this fora. And we just know that in 2005, there was at that time Romani Women Initiative and the European Roma Rights Center. They had a statement within the Commission on the Status of Women. But since 2005, and 3 years ago, when me and Dafina Savic took part within the Commission on the Status of Women, we don't know what has happened in between. So from my experience, it was I just realized how much GFOD has done to support Roma women to occupy these spaces, or to make their voice heard. And I'm very grateful because this is happening, and GFOD is a big supporter. So I really hope that in the next few years we can achieve a resolution on communities discriminated on working descent, or even more than that. But I really believe in the vision and mission of GFOD and the impact this work can have on our communities.
Indeed, Simona, let's hope for the best and let's aim for the best. And of course, this resolution which you're talking about is something which is, of course, we should kind of aim and do our best in order to achieve it. For a young Roma individual or anyone who wants to support the community, what advice would you like to give, Simona? And what are the best ways a youth Roma can be involved in the movement?
This is a challenging one because what I have experienced in the last few years, and I'm quite open to say this, is that there's not so much Roma youth activism around. And this is because of different factors, right? On the one hand, it's access to opportunities, to labor markets, to education for Roma youngsters. On the other hand, it's also the shrinking civil space that we see across Europe when it comes to civil society participation in general, and then, Roma in particular, because we see many times there's rather tokenistic approach when it comes to Roma participation. And then youth within the general Roma participation, are even less and less present. So from my experience so far is that I really recommend young people in general to take a chance at all the opportunities that are available when it comes to training, seminars, exchange programs, because this is how you start to socialize and understand, what's your mission, what's your role within, the larger, youth or Roma movement. But I think that's the first step to get acquainted, to know how you can approach certain things, how you can advocate for your position, for your rights. So that would be one of the key steps. And the second one would be to educate themselves, because we see nowadays in the area of disinformation and social media algorithms that many young people are not able to think for themselves. And I assume what I'm saying, they are very much influenced by what they hear, but they are not able to kind of search for the right information and double check and fact check what they hear and what they read. So I think education and breaking this barrier of ignorance, it's also a crucial step, not only for young people, but for our society in general.
Thank you indeed. I think, Simona, when we talk about Roma youth, and not only Roma youth, but also youth from other communities discriminated on work and decent, especially Dalit or Haratin or youth from other part of the world. A number of times when we talk about challenges, which often are a combination of systemic barriers, socioeconomic struggles, and Not only this, sometimes also internal community dynamics which prevail over there. And of course, fear of repression and discrimination, internalized stigma, identity struggles, and political and leadership gaps when we often talk about youth. So these are major challenges. But I hope when this podcast is being heard by other youth, especially Roma youth, they get motivated and they're also part of the movement. And I'm sure it might be a huge challenge to bring Roma youth together. But finally, as we move to the last question, which is about what exactly can other communities discriminated on work and decent learn from the Roma community's fight and resilience? And vice versa, what can Roma learn from other communities discriminated on work and decent in terms of mobilization and activism? Simona.
Indeed, there's so much to learn from each other, not only in terms of mobilization, but also common challenges and struggles. So when I first, got in touch with the concept of CWD, and when I heard, from my colleagues from Latin America, from Africa, from Asia, what are their experiences of discrimination, it's like, wow, this is about my community as well. So the struggles are the same, but I'm very much impressed, by the Latin American colleagues and the structure that they have in Brazil, more specific CONAC, and the specific departments, the legal department, the women department. So it's such a nice structure, and also even though they are a traditional community, they are trying to go beyond the boundaries and the challenges, the barriers that they have in the country, and have Quilombola representatives, and I think that's a great achievement. And we definitely, as Roma, have a lot to learn from them. And also, I think the African developments that you have just covered with Queen in the last podcast, I think they are also quite significant, and that's also a model of how we can get organized in Europe and achieve something similar. So I think there's a lot to learn from each of the communities, but definitely the fact that we came together, as a group that has also a significant impact in terms of building hope and resilience and becoming a stronger force together.
Thank you, Simona. Indeed, as we wrap up this inspiring and motivating conversation, one thing which is clear is strength, happiness, and movement are deeply connected in the Roma struggle for justice and dignity. Strength is found in the resilience of a people who refuse to be silenced. Happiness is cultivated in music, culture, and community. And of course, movement is both a physical journey and, of course, a call for change. The fight for equality continues, but as Simona has shown, it is fueled by unwavering spirit of those who dare to dream of a better future. Thank you all again for listening. And remember, every voice, every action, and every step forward matters. Thank you so much for your time, Simona. We request all our listeners to like this, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your efforts will go a long way in helping us to reach out to a larger audience and, of course, strengthen the movement regionally as well as globally. If you really like the content, be sure to share this video with your family, with your friends, with other organizations, with whosoever you really want to. And until the next episode, take care and see you soon. Jai Bhim, Opo Roma, Lente, Salve, Uhuru.